Usually these people that were living in my yard doesn't bother me.
Yeah, yeah.
He's an old mountain guy.
Oh yeah.
Georgia guy.
Yeah.
We're, he looks like one of the Robertsons, you know, the beard.
Oh yeah, the big beard and everything. Yeah. Wow.
Such a nice guy, too.
Yeah.
One, two. One, two, three, four, five.
I was thinking of coming over to that play they have here on the weekend. I guess it's right here. Nothing gets over. Just the way you stand. How's your dad?
Hey, Birdie. Hey, Birdie.
Looks like
Oh,
Hey,
buddy.
Kristen. Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
I've never used this one.
We could take few sessions, pictures too.
You had a significance to it, yeah. Well, before 5 o'clock, before it gets here, they may drift in, but
Good afternoon. I'm Mickey Robbins, President of McCoy Farm and Garden. I'd like to welcome you all to our first candidate forum. It's a great event, and this should be an exciting and educational opportunity for all of us to exchange views and to hear it straight from all the candidates. Before I turn the forum over to our distinguished moderator, let me touch on a few rules. Please observe the COVID practices of wearing masks and social distancing. We've gotten off to a good start, and I think everybody's doing that. We have extra masks around, and we also have hand sanitizer and gloves. We'll get that out, and I'll put it on the table. I think some of that's already out. Please turn off your cell phones, and feel free to use the restrooms, which are located just behind the main house. And now, in the spirit of having a fun educational experience, it's my pleasure to turn the forum over to a prominent educator from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. She is a professor emerita and former dean of the graduate school at UTC. She now writes children's books, and she has moderated a forum at Walden before. It's great to have her back, Dr. Deborah Arfkin. And I'll pass out 3x5 cards to write your questions on so you know those. Okay, thank you, Deborah.
Well, it's a wonderful October evening, and this promises to be a very enlightening forum. What we're going to do is to start with introductions, self-introductions of all of the candidates here. And with respect to seniority and position, I'm going to start with Mayor Trohannis and ask him, Joe, you got this? And ask him to give us an introduction and tell us what special qualities he brings to the Walden Town Board and which he will continue to bring to the Walden Town Board. So we'll start with you, and then we'll move down the line, and each one of you will have 2 minutes.
Test, is that good?
Good.
Wonderful. Good evening. It's always great to be back here at McCoy, whether it's for a wedding or a birthday party or even a marriage. I'd like to thank Nikki and the fellow board members for hosting this event. So thanks for putting this on. My name is Bill Trohannis, and I have the pleasure of being your mayor, as I have been since 2015. My wife and I moved to the mountain 40 years ago, and actually on November 1st, it's our 40th wedding anniversary. I'm a father, a grandfather, and a former operations manager for a Fortune 500 company, Procter & Gamble. I retired after 35 years with P&G, and my commitment as your mayor is a full-time job. Whether it's just having a conversation with a resident on the road about traffic or the roads or a speed sign, or hitting the roads after a storm. I've been known to do that as well, just to make sure our roads are clear or if something needs to be done about those. I appreciate it, and I'm up for round-the-clock obligations of the road. Walden is such a very special place to me, as I'm sure it is to all of you. One thing I'm sure of that my fellow candidates will agree on is our town is at a crossroads right now. With the withdrawal of the hall tax in the amount of some $400,000 at its highest point, our town resources and, honestly, your tax bill are really on the ballot this year. Oh, 15, I'm sorry, I thought you said time. I support a plan that requires no new tax increase and ensures the continuity of the quality of services that we have here in Walden. What I bring to Walden, critical for the next 4 years, my experience as mayor and my commitment to this community. My guiding principles are keeping Walden charming, safe, and affordable, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to the McCoy Farm and Garden Board for organizing and hosting the debate for the community. I have been a resident in Walden for decades and spent my teens growing up in Walden, climbing the side of the mountain, hiking at falling waterfalls, and exploring the woods. You might recognize me from Sundays spent at the Little Brown Church with my golden retriever, Aubrey, or my house that is decorated for holidays, as I love to lift the spirits and enjoy the looks on the children's faces as they view the decorations. I love the natural beauty, quietness, and small town charm of Walden. I advocated for the dog park and was appointed to the dog park committee to work with Sarah McKenzie and other community members to bring the dream to reality for our four-legged residents. I enjoy visiting the many parks and amenities such as McCoy Farm and Gardens, the wonderful events and celebrations that we have here, such as the Memorial Day picnic for the community, the pumpkin patch, and of course, the puppy patch. I'm grateful for the Walden's Ridge Emergency Services and everything that they provide for us in our community, and the offerings at the Bachman Community Center. I truly believe that we are better together as a community that works, serves, and lives to help our neighbors. Thank you.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. I'll say it a little louder. My name is Colin Johnson. I'm running for alderman here for the town of Walden, and it's an absolute privilege to be up here today to talk to you guys a little bit about my background and about my positions. I would like to thank the McCoy board for putting this on for us, and to also thank all the candidates for having the gumption to come up here and do what we're doing. This certainly is a lot of fortitude to come up here and speak in front of people about what we believe, and we're not professional politicians. So thank you guys for coming out and sharing the stage with me. So my background, I'm a little bit different of a candidate than some of the other folks on this stage. So sadly, I do not have decades of life and living life in this town. My wife and I, we moved here back in 2015 with our two wonderful kids, Blevin and Salem. They're students at Thrasher Elementary School. They are not here today because my wife was so sure if we brought them, y'all would not vote for me. So therefore, you can imagine how great they are. But guys, first and foremost, I am a family man. We live up here. We came here because it felt like the right place for our family. It reminded me a lot of the small town I grew up in North Carolina. And we were ready to vacate the big city of Atlanta. And I do have to tell you guys, there's a lot of me coming to this mountain, and there's a lot of people with my background that are tired of the big city, whether it be Nashville, Atlanta, as far north as DC. We have new neighbors from DC. They're vacating the big bustle of the town, and they're coming to this wonderful town of Walden. So I just like to say what attracted me to this town is the fact that it is very well kept, it's very charming, and it's a nice small town feel. And my commitment to you guys is to do everything I can in my power to continue to push forward in that way, and do the best we can to grow gracefully as a town. So thank you guys so much for your time today.
First of all, I want to thank the board of the McCoy Farm and Gardens for hosting this event tonight. My name is Lindsay Schmidt, and I'm glad to be here tonight. And I am really excited to be running for alderman of the town of Walden. I've spent a lifetime of summers here, and my husband and I have lived here for the past 13 years. But even beyond that, I've had a family member who's been up here in Summertown since at least the late 1800s. So I feel like Walden is almost a part of who I am and a part of my DNA. So it seems very natural for me to want to serve this community that I love so much. My goals for Walden, if I were elected, would be to keep it a safe, clean, prosperous, friendly town that it has always been. We have so much natural beauty and so many great amenities. And I want to keep those and maintain those while preparing for and facilitating growth that is appropriate for the small town character of Walden. I would like to do that by encouraging the engagement of the citizens of Walden. I'd like to hear what our citizens want Walden to look like in the future. And I would like to increase the transparency and accountability of the town board so that we can all be on the same page as we move forward. Walden really is the best place in the world to live, and I think it deserves the best that we have to offer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Joe, you start that when I start cleaning this for the 2 minutes or when I start talking? When I first came to Walden, Joe was in charge of the AV system for Little Brown Church, and I know that my kids got a kick out of watching him work those dials and things. They're very small at the time, and he even made that seem like magic. So I'm interested to see what he's going to do with the 2 minutes here with his little wand. I moved to Walden about 25 years ago with my wife Heather. Very fortunate that we were able to bring our children up in this community. I consider that to be the greatest blessing that we have, to bring our children to this community. We first lived just down the hill here on East Brow Road, which was at that time the second most dilapidated house in Walden. And then we moved to the most dilapidated house in Walden, 1 mile out this front gate, which is Topside. And that's a log cabin that was built in 1882 by Judge Key. That was a contemporary of this building. This building that Senator Bachman renovated in 1912 actually did not used to have the stone here. This was upgraded in 1912. Before that, it had the rugged look of many of the mountain structures like our home. And the reason I tell that story is that's where my commitment to Walden comes from, is I was first and foremost a steward to this town. 25 years ago, I promised my wife it would take us exactly 2 years to renovate and move in to the log cabin on this Topside. 5 years later, that project was finished, and we were able to move our kids from the little guest house into the main house. So I know what commitment is from a personal level. I committed 5 years of my life to saving a historic property in this town. From that, I also then became a volunteer at the Pumpkin Patch, and then many other activities over the past 6 years as vice mayor and alderman. And I will say this, and I'll close with this. Bill and I have served together for 6 years on the town board. Bill's a good man, we've worked together, and we just simply have a different vision of Walden forward. But we both, I think, have the best interest of Walden at heart.
Who knows how many germs we all have on our hands? Good grief. Now, this is probably the most interesting part of this forum. Coming up now is a series of answers to 5 questions that have been posed by the board. And I'm going to start going, since the mayor answered first this time, I'm going to have you start first. This time we'll go down the line, then we'll rotate and come back again. So there are 5 questions. The first of them is this one. Will you commit to keeping the minimum residential lot area of 2 acres? Will you commit to keeping the minimum residential lot area of 2 acres?
I will commit to the minimum lot size of 2 acres. And I think it's important everybody understands why. I don't know if most of you know why we have a 2-acre minimum in the town of Walden. Most people out of Walden think it's because we like to have large properties and there's some sort of elitist notion to it, but that's not it at all. When I first came to Walden, Sam Chester, who was a previous selectman, and Max Bonner, who actually helped form Walden back in the mid-'70s, told me why we have 2-acre minimum. And it's because we want to be good neighbors. Everybody here is on a septic system. It takes about 1 acre in ground that doesn't perk well in order to have a septic system. Because septic systems fail in Walden, the decision was made that everybody should have a 2-acre minimum. That way you can be a good neighbor, build your home, have planned for your future, and then if your system fails, you won't be affecting your neighbor by a failed system. You can put in that second system. So the reason behind the 2-acre minimum is so you can be a good neighbor and property owner yourself and not conflict with your neighbors. I think that's a really important point, because we'll see about some of the land development issues that we have in the town. That's where our conflicts are coming from, is our inability to be good neighbors and think about our neighbors before we make suggestions of changes. Then I'll touch upon that when we get to the lines over property issue. Thank you.
Absolutely. We've committed to the 2-acre minimum for residential lots. I actually have several reasons why I would. I do think the aesthetic is better when the lots are bigger and houses aren't just on top of each other. But also the very practical reason of septic systems. The Walden Bridge ground is so rocky and it is very difficult to find a place that will park. So I think it's really important that we have those 2 acres for each lot, so that every house can have an adequate septic system. But also, I think it's important not to have too dense a residential area. I think the denser a residential area is, the more overburdened that services can be. So I also want to protect our services and our community from being overburdened. So that's.
Colin Johnson, the question about will you commit to keeping the minimum residential lot area of 2 acres?
So as an elected alderman, I firmly believe that it's my job to enforce all of the ordinances in the town of Walden. And right now, one of the town ordinances on the books certainly is the 2-acre lot minimum. So, without cherry picking a single law in the books, I commit to enforce all the laws in the books. That said, the 2-acre lot minimum is particularly relevant to what I do for a living. I'm a licensed civil engineer. I work as an engineering consultant, managing a small firm downtown, and we consult to municipalities and private builders. And so I do have a pretty intimate knowledge over, the reasoning behind why we want to try to keep this 2-acre lot minimum to where it's at. But with that, I do want to point out that under the leadership both of Bill and Lee and then Sarah, is we are moving into a master planning effort as a town. Something I have a lot of experience doing. I've done both on the municipal side, helping towns lead their master planning efforts, and also working with towns on the development side, trying to help them pursue the right development that they're looking for to meet their master plan. So all of that said, I'm very excited about this master planning effort, and the big part is we'll hire some consultant, like sort of what I do. It will not be my firm, obviously, but we would hire them to come in and work with our town leaders and work with our town citizens and residents to discern exactly what the town wants for its master plan. So, while I commit obviously to uphold all the rules and laws and ordinances in the books, I think at the same time, as we're moving into this new master planning initiative, we need to be sure that we're going in with an open mind, and we're ready to hear all of the residents in the town, and ready to discern what they want for our town. At the end of the day, we want the master plan for the town of Walden to ultimately represent what all of Walden wants. And if at some point the outcome of that master plan is changes in some of the ordinances we already have on the books, I commit as equally to reinforce and support those rules as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I would commit, and I think that we should maintain the requirement of a minimum of 2 acres for a residential lot. I'm going to reiterate some of the other things that have already been said. Our current roads and resources are being stretched thin and suffering from the effects from all the other development that's going on in Walden's Ridge. I mean, you just have to drive down the W Road and you can see that over time all the traffic has, and of course mountains move and it's moving. And then the issue with the septic tanks polluting the land and with the increased development. And then we just want to maintain the charm of Walden, which is the wooded lots, space between neighbors, and the like. So I think that is important. Thank you.
In early 2019, I met with and this is a little bit redundant to what's already been said, but in early 2019, I met with the Hamilton County Regional Planning Agency, to discuss the renewal of our land use plan. The first step in that process was the survey that went out in early 2019. Ms. McKenzie did that. She's not here this evening, but Lee and I both thankful for doing that. And for those of you that did provide input, thank you so much. That survey yielded these results. 78% of the people responded that they are in favor of keeping the 2-acre minimum. And in another question, 37% thought that townhomes should be allowed, but not encouraged. Our new land use plan is going to focus on the Taft Highway corridor as it is now, and I think it's important to listen to the voices from the community during that new land use plan process. And based on our recent survey, as I just mentioned, I will commit to keeping the minimum residential lot area to 2 acres. Thank you. Okay.
So this is the second question. It has three components to it.
Could you use the microphone, please, to read the question? Thank you.
The second question has three components in it. What is your vision for the Bachman Community Center, Pumpkin Patch, and the McCoy Farm and Gardens?
Thank you. Each of these facilities support the charm of Walden. There's untapped potential to connect the community with the services that each uniquely provide. Each of these organizations has their own individual boards, and my goal is to support each board's vision, provide resources as needed to ensure their continued improvement toward being self-sustaining. Promoting these three facilities to the broader community and continuing to provide my personal sweat equity as I have in the past is another goal of mine. Expected in the new land use plan, and we talked about this a little, one of the candidates did, is a call for improved connectivity within the town recreational areas. And by that I mean this McCoy Farms, Pumpkin Patch, and Bachman. Under my leadership, we applied for a sidewalk grant to assist us in becoming a more walkable and bikeable community. And it's one of the best grants out there for the fact that it's 95% funded, 5% from us. And it has a $950,000 maximum benefit, which is fabulous, and the investment from the town would be $50,000. So it's a good deal, and hopefully we'll get it this time. This is actually the third time we've applied for it, and the ratio of payout versus investment is at its best, so keep your fingers crossed. Thank you.
Again, Kristen, would you please answer the same question? What is your vision for the Bachman Community Center, the Pumpkin Patch, and the McCoy Farm and Gardens?
My goals would be to continue to support these parks and community centers that play a vital role in the quality of life that we love in the place we call home, Walden. I believe that we have all learned in the tumultuous time of the COVID pandemic how important it is to have wonderful places for us to visit, play, and enjoy life close to home. I feel that all of these locations provide that for the residents and amplify each individual's and their family's quality of life. It's important that we also maintain a spirit of continuous improvement for each amenity, and that we work as a community to volunteer our time and talents to these worthy places. Thank you.
And Colin Johnson, would you please answer the same question? What is your vision for the Bachman Community Center, the pumpkin patch, and McCoy Farm and Gardens?
So for any community to thrive, you really need to have a vibrant network of parks, open spaces, and community places. And I think that one of the great things about Walden is we do have a lot of great amenities, such as the McCoy Farm and Bachman Community Center and the Pumpkin Patch and the Puppy Patch. What a great network of amenities that we have here in our town. Building a little bit on what Bill said, I think one of the next steps for our community is to try to figure out a way to enhance the pedestrian connectivity. One of the things that we kind of build ourselves upon in my engineering firm is creating safe, connected pedestrian environments. We thrive in placemaking. All of our clients that we work with, that's one of the things that they hire us for, is we are the best in the business at taking a development and making it a place, making it somewhere people want to be, and then creating a connectivity plan to help connect all of these great places. Well, and also building on what Bill said, one of the things that I have a lot of experience in doing is working with municipalities just like Walden to go after and win the grant funds that Mr. Terhanis was just talking about. There's a distinct strategy to putting together your grant application, and it starts with having a master plan that shows a long-term vision for your community, and then it starts with reaching out to various community partners and building relationships and being able to show all of that in a grant application. All of these things I've done before for municipalities as a consultant, and it's something I look forward to bringing to my role as an alderman here for the town of Walden. I'm going to work with Bill or Lee or whomever I have the privilege of working with to go out, pursue those grant funds, and really make some of this connectivity in our town a reality.
Thank you. And now, Lizzie Schmidt, would you tackle the same question? What is your vision for the Bachman Community Center, Pumpkin Patch, and McCoy Farm and Gardens?
What I really love about all three of those places, Bachman Community Center, Pumpkin Patch, and McCoy Farms, is that not one of them is heavily reliant on the town for their revenue. They get their vision and their resources from the community itself, not from government. I would really like to continue to have them supported so strongly through the community, through volunteers and through contributions. I also feel like maybe the town government should support them a little bit more. But no matter what, my vision would be that they would each continue to be places where we can gather for community events and foster stronger relationships within our town.
Lee Davis, trying to keep everything fair and square. Would you please tell us what your vision is for the Bachman Community Center, the Pumpkin Patch, and the McCoy Farm and Garden?
Thank you, I will. And is Karen Stone here? I thought I saw Karen earlier. Karen, we have to add also the Walden Ridge Civic League to that list. As everybody knows, I mean, just take a minute and look around you right here. Here you are in the middle of McCoy. 10 years ago, this was the most divisive issue in our town, is whether to fund this project. And at town meetings, when I first joined the board 6 years ago, it was, I don't know if it was evenly divided, but there were a lot of people who were hot about the town committing resources to McCoy. You can't find a critic, at least they won't come out publicly anymore and be a critic of McCoy. We've chased them away. So what we have to do is we've got to connect those. The town needs to be the hub. The town hall needs to be a hub. And what I mean by that is this. Right behind you over in that corner, there is the beginning of what can be a path from here to the pumpkin patch. So the area that is designated for a Frisbee golf area below the pumpkin patch can be a walking trail. So the first thing you do is you connect the pumpkin patch and you connect McCoy. Then you figure out how do you connect the Walden's Ridge Civic League and Bachman. And you probably want to get the Connor Toll House brought in as well, even though it's technically outside of Walden, because then you have the connectivity and the vision, that people start thinking about Walden and all these things come to mind. One of the things they don't like seeing, and I think Daly's here, is the trash when you come up the W Road. So we need to get our Eagle Scout projects and our church groups and our bicycling groups, those people who bicycle up the mountain, to donate their time to pick up the trash so that when you come into Walden, it's beautiful. We are branded as a town that we have these activities together. And then this is the hard part. We've got to make sure that as we look at our infrastructure, we don't damage these plans to the unintended consequences of traffic and cars that come on these roadways and threaten the pedestrians and threaten the quality of life that we're building here.
And Mrs. Schmidt, would you, excuse me. Back to you, Lee. You're off the hook. Okay, for now. Question 3. What is your view of the Lions Orchid project?
Two minutes or 2 hours? I will say very briefly, let me make it very clear. When all of you bought your homes and you knew what it was zoned for. When we think of good planning, it's very easy to understand what good planning is in a town. And if we want to have a change in a plan, it's when you shut your eyes and somebody tells you, I'm going to build this next to your house, and you hear what they're going to build, you come away with it and you say, I'm okay with that. I think that's fine. Right now, for the first time in 45 years in the town of Walden's history, we have deviated from our zoning ordinances, and we're allowing the Lions Orchid project to be different than the rules have been for the last 45 years. We are damaging 2 communities when we do that. One in Walden, Laurel Cove, Laurel Avenue, and people who built their homes there 30 years ago and played by the rules. Those people's homes, their home value, and their day-to-day life on the road that they walk down every morning is going to change. And then we have the people on Timesville Road who are not in Walden, but they're our neighbors. Their lives are going to change. And we as a town, because we did not have a plan, we got scared and we voted to allow this change on the promise of sales tax with no proof that it's going to come to the town. And we'll talk about that in the next question. But on the Lions Orchid project, we are being poor neighbors by not having the planning to think about the impact it's going to be for our neighbors. And we're damaging the people right next to the project. And then the unintended consequences are maybe you think you're okay with a grocery store. And it's not about a grocery store, it's about the size and scope of this thing. But it's going to come with costs. There's going to be needing a police department. Signal Mountain's not going to police us anymore if we have our own commercial district. And it's going to come with increased traffic. And it's going to be harder to walk at places like this. So it's the unintended consequences I'm concerned with. And obviously I was the one person who voted no for the project.
Thank you. And now, Lizzie, it is your turn. So, what is your view of the Lions Orchid
In my opening, I said that I believe that Walden was the very best place in the world to live, and I do believe it is, but being the very best means having really high standards, this project was proposed as a Village Center 1 with 6 very specific requirements, 6 very high standards, but unfortunately through the process, every single one of those standards was waived, so that really our community actually had no input into what we were getting. It also has brought about a lot of divisiveness in our community, and not to mention the fact that our town board is left with the expense of defending against a very expensive lawsuit. I don't think that this process has been well done, and I don't think it's been fair to the citizens of Walden. Thank you very much.
So, Colin, the question now comes to you. What is your view of the Lions Orchid project?
So to start off my response to that, I actually want to pick up on something that Lee Davis said just a minute ago in his response. And the term he said was play by the rules. And what I want to point to is that the developer for this project, when he bought the piece of land and went about the process of rezoning it, he played by the rules. From step one, he went to the Planning Commission, followed the rules there, got approval. Step two, went to the Board of Aldermen, followed the rules there, and got approval. This was last October. Now, we need to not be asking ourselves right now what we need to do that happened in October. I think what we really need to be focusing on is what are we going to do moving forward? Within the rules that the developer was asked to play by, he got his zoning approval. Now, what we have is 23 conditions to live by that we can use to control what he does, and we have the opportunity to hopefully be as heavy-handed as possible to oversee the development, to hopefully ensure that we get something the town of Walden deserves. Because I agree with these guys. We do not want a low-quality, ugly development. We need something that is befitting of our town and the town's charm. Unfortunately, the developer played by the rules and got his approval, and so now the only thing we have left in our disposal is to really use the 23 conditions that he was approved with to try to leverage it to get the best development possible. And so, again, with my background, I think I'm in a great position to see that. You're going to hear them talk about septic design. I have designed septic systems for grocery stores. I know how it's done. I know how to do it the right way. I work with Bobby Scott on a regular basis at Hamilton County Health Department on designing and installing septic tanks. People are worried about the technical side of this development, and they should be. But there is a permitting process by which the developer has to go about to get permits for each of those things. Land disturbance permit for stormwater, driveway permit for traffic, septic permit for septic systems. We are here to oversee that and make sure he gets all of his permits properly, but I do not think it's helpful for the town to rehash a debate that happened in October. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Kristen, now the question comes to you. What is your view of the Lions Orchid project?
I believe it's the responsibility and obligation of the mayor and the aldermen to ensure that each proposed project matches the character of the town and is carefully reviewed and vetted, and that each project enhances the quality of life and is an opportunity for our citizens. We must ensure that individual projects are in fact opportunities and not burdens, and development can be good for a community or bad, depending on the type of development, the location of the development, and the services that it would bring to the residents. I feel that it's very important to have all the facts and information before making a decision that could impact the town of Walden for years to come.
I think Mr. Davis stated it earlier that perhaps he and I have a difference of opinion. The Lions Orchid property as it sits now is an abandoned 50,000 square foot facility. It's a greenhouse, it's an eyesore, and produces no value for the community of Walden. Similar to the new life breathed into the McCoy farm or the pumpkin patch, I believe the parcel of land can be put to use for the betterment of our community. If it's done right and thoughtfully and consistent with the aesthetics that reflects favorably on our town and its neighboring businesses, it will work, but it's our responsibility to ensure that that happens. I voted in favor of the project because, as everyone has said, there are 23 conditions attached to that. And it's our job to make sure that they're all abided by from the developer. And the location of the development is exactly where the 1998 Walden Town Center Plan and the Plateau Area Plan designated to be. I've spent the last 2 years listening to our residents on what they want, There are residents and non-residents that are opposed to the project as it's been approved. It's my job to listen to them as well, and I've talked to the neighbors that have been in Walden for 5 months, 5 years, and 5 decades, and they all agree they don't want to pay more taxes. The vast majority would love to have a convenient, full-service, competitively priced option for groceries. Many see this as a win-win-win. Ensure our taxes stay low, provide a full-service, convenient option for groceries on the mountain, and delivers a well-thought-out design. Retail space is the foundation for our village center. Thank you. I guess I stay put, probably.
So, Mayor Johannes, the fourth question is coming to you, and it is, with the hall tax going away, how do you think the town should respond?
The hall tax is a tax on interest and dividend income from investments. It's the only personal income tax that we have in the state of Tennessee. It was 6% in 2015, and it has declined by 1% each year, and it expires in January of 2021. The hall tax is equivalent to roughly a third of the town budget and our revenue stream. At its highest point, it was over $400,000 in revenue to our town. In 2016, when the assessments of the property values increased, we, the board and I, kept the tax base at 38 cents per $100. It was 43 cents, but because of the property values increased, when we were assessed, they lowered the millage rate. By doing that, it kept your tax bill the same as it was the previous year. In our recent survey, we had 22% of the respondents that were open to a tax increase. We all recognize costs over time. Without any other revenue sources, we're not addressing the concerns that the citizens have of traffic issues, sidewalks, and safety. The only other municipal revenue that is available to us primarily is commercial development, such as the Lines project. Other things like paving or garbage collection fees would increase the tax burden to our citizens. Sales tax revenues can help offset the loss of the hall tax and provide the opportunity for future town improvements and services for our town. Thank you so much.
I feel that we need to explore opportunities of securing grants for the various projects and to help replace the funds that we're going to lose from the hall tax starting in January. We should also ask the community for their input. There may be some innovative ways that we have not currently thought about to secure funds for our budget, and that way we are not placing the burden of losing that money on the homeowners by taxing them. I don't feel that that would be right. Thank you.
So small towns like Walden tend to be naturally bedroom communities. And by the nature of what we are really at a tax disadvantage from the get-go, because a lot of the revenue that goes to fund towns is brought in through commercial tax and other business taxes that happen in a town. And by the nature of the fact that we're a bedroom community, we're at a disadvantage because we simply do not have the tax base on that side of the ledger. Therefore, the multitude of our taxes come from property taxes, residential property taxes. So when you start seeing a drop in revenue from something like the hall tax, it really puts our town in a bind fiscally. For me, it is very important that we be physically sound and do everything we can to try to ensure solvency of our town. And so we really do have to sort of think creatively about where to find funding sources from. Obviously, Kristen mentioned that you can find grants for capital expenses, and that's always a great source. But the question is where do our operational expenses come from? And again, there's not a lot of options for towns like Walden. You can have commercial taxes, but we're dealing with an issue already where there's a lot of residents that don't want any more commercial development. You can have additional residential development, but again, we're also dealing with a lot of property or residents in town that want the property size to be 2 acres or minimum. So therefore, we really have a limited residential development tax base. So then that pushes us only into the other option, which is the option of potentially raising property taxes. Well, if you can ask George W. Bush what happens when you raise taxes, you're not going to get reelected. So politicians tend to stay away from raising taxes as well. So at the end of the day, we really have limited levers by which we can use to increase revenues on our town. And I think that's the hard job for us as leaders, is we got to sit in the room and say, all right, we don't want commercial development. All right, we don't want residential development. All right, we don't want to increase taxes. So we have to find something that gives, and the town has to get on board and get behind it. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. Lizzie, the question comes to you next.
Well, I think what is really a shame is that we've known for 6 years that the hall tax was going to expire this year, and that our town board has never made any move at dealing with it. So now we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. I don't think that we can depend on the proposed grocery store to provide the stable revenue that we need to make sure that we can pay for our services. We do need a stable, known source of revenue. I believe Walden is worthy of our investment. My papa always said, you get what you pay for, and in Walden, we actually get a lot more than what we pay for. We live in an amazing place, and I think that we are going to have to invest in our town and be responsible to pay for the services that we receive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lizzie. And Lee, will you finish up this question for us? And then we'll be back to you.
We have had 6 years to plan for this. In 2016, the hall tax brought $430,000 into Walden. In 2020, it brought $146,000. So we've seen this decline since 2016. We'll get one more payment in 2021 of $146,000. And it's not personal, but I have to be direct. We don't have a plan. That's a failure of leadership. We need to have a plan at our town hall when we have important crossroads like this. I think one of the attributes that I can bring as mayor of Walden is I'm a serious person. I deal with serious problems for people every day. That's what I do. I deal with serious cases and serious problems. We have to have a candid discussion. It's got to be part of our land use plan on how we want to solve this thing. The idea that you wait 6 years and you hope a development that is unpopular to a majority of people in the town is going to bring in a sales tax revenue to save the town from the decrease in the hall tax is not a plan. Okay, it's not personal, but that is not a plan. We need to have a plan. We need to have input from all of you on what that plan needs to be. Sales taxes are highly variable. I'm not picking on McDonald's, but we all know McDonald's closed 2 weeks ago. There's no sales taxes from dormant buildings. COVID-19, nobody knew about that 2 years ago. But all you have to do is pick up a newspaper. All across the country, the state of Tennessee right now is in a dire situation because of sales tax falling off. As a small town, our greatest investment that we have in ourselves is our property taxes. And with our property taxes, we can control our revenues. Part of the conversation when we have a land use plan is to examine what are our revenues, what are our expenses, and prioritize how we're going to spend our money on what we care about to so we can have places like this right here.
We're now going to look at the last question, and while the candidates are answering this last question, would you take the 3x5 cards that you have and write down any questions that you have that have not been addressed so far? And then we'll, after the closing remarks that each of these candidates makes, we'll deal with those questions for you. So, the last question is, what do you see as the primary challenges for Walden, and what are your goals in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, we have several challenges and we have several opportunities that we can address in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think most of us experience these on a day-to-day basis when we're driving around or in our community. What I experience is a nibbling away at the edges of Walden. Whether that's the commercial development that's happening now, proposed development that's happening on Taft Highway, whether it's the residential development in the county. You've all seen now a fair amount now, there's now another proposed development just outside of Walden, or whether it's increases from Signal Mountain. We are becoming more and more rare as a town with green spaces, space between neighbors. The quality of life that we have is something that is rare. That is potentially a very good thing for Walden if we protect it and have the connectivity we talked about with our parks like McCoy and Pumpkin Patch. If we work on our pedestrian areas, open up some of the closed roads that we have, make our outdoor life come together. Those are the types that clean up the litter coming into the town. Those are the things that are going to lift our property values. And I hate the term branding, but that's really what it comes down to. You know, Walden is going to be a branded town. People will say, oh, Walden, I've been up there before. I went to McCoy, or I came to an event here in the evening. We can improve that, and that is the protection for ourselves in the future. Our protection is to invest in ourselves. Walden residents, our greatest asset are the people that are here and the homes and properties that we have. We do not need to listen to the promise of a speculative developer. And let me say this, I am all for development, cohesive development that makes sense for our town. But that development needs to be driven by a land use plan. It does not need to be driven by one person coming in, buying a piece of property, and coming in and changing the rules. Respectfully, Colin, he changed the rules. It was denied as a commercial property. And then getting his wish at your cost. And it's those threats of unintended consequences I'm concerned about. But I'm positive about all the rest of it that we can do together in Walden.
I believe that the biggest challenges that Walden faces over the next 5 to 10 years is controlling and facilitating appropriate growth that really is in keeping with the small town aesthetic that we have in Walden. Also, I believe safety is another challenge that we have. We need to be sure that we have adequate policing so that we can keep speeding down on our streets and keep our neighborhoods safe. Now my goals for Walden would be to really maintain and expand our wonderful resources like McCoy Farm and Gardens and ensure safety and again to really balance development and progress with maintaining our small town atmosphere and our natural beauty. Thank you.
So I could easily spend 2 minutes telling you about my vision for Walden, but what I'm really most excited about with this position and what I'm most excited about serving as alderman for all of you guys and for our whole town is to not tell you guys what my vision is, but to lead this master planning and strategic visioning effort to discern what the town's vision is for Walden over the next 5 to 10 years. Certainly, as a resident here with a wife and 2 kids, I have my own vision of what I'd like for Walden to be. But at the end of the day, we're elected to represent you guys. And so what I'm really excited about is being at the helm to help lead this master planning, strategic visioning effort, leveraging my background as an engineer and a planning consultant to help do that, and really try to figure out what it is that the town wants, put it on paper, get it codified, and let's protect our town with codes and ordinances moving forward, so that way we can ensure that we get exactly what we want moving forward. Thanks.
Okay, continuing with the question of challenges and goals.
I believe some of the challenges that the town's going to be facing going forward is, one, obviously the loss of the revenue from the hall tax, and how do we work to increase that with our budget, upkeep on the current roads and the infrastructure, and then uniting the community after the outcome that we have with the grocery store. I kind of feel like we're a community divided on this, and I think it's important that we could try and come together in some way. My vision for Walden would be to continue to support the community services and parks, such as, Walden's Ridge Emergency Services, Bachman Community Center, the Puppy Patch, the McCoy Farm and Gardens, and Pumpkin Patch, along with any other parks or trails that are to come or currently in the town limits. And then work to maintain the majestic character and history of the town, as well as the natural beauty of the town's trails and vistas, such as, Mabbott Springs and such. And then maintain and improve the roads by ensuring there is adequate funding due to wide range in temperatures and elements that we face here on the mountain, and by working with the county to repair and maintain the historic nature of the W Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Many mountain residents are driving right through Walden into Signal Mountain, or even driving off the mountain to go shopping. As our 2019 survey results indicated, residents that have been here for decades want limited but smart development. Our new land use plan is currently out for bid to provide professional services and assistance to the board and to the community to help us do just that. The process of needing to gather input in itself is going to be a challenge, obviously, with COVID, but we'll get it done. As the composition of our community changes, so does the need of our citizens. This is exactly why it's so important to keep Walden charming, safe, and affordable. I've spent the last 24 months listening to residents, young and old, lifelong residents, and even newcomers moving to the mountain, eager for their feedback on what they love about Walden and what the opportunities are that the board and mayor and aldermen can improve on. As far as goals, I myself am adamant about preserving the character and the charm of the community that we love for future generations. We will maintain the charm of the McCoy property, the Pumpkin Patch, and prepare to pass the torch to the future continuation of all of these great facilities that we have. We'd like to continue to fund Walden's Ridge Emergency Service, significantly increase the coverage of our Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, and provide fire and safety for all the town residents. We will provide a village center for the town that will financially assist us for the future needs of the community and keeping Walden affordable for our children's children, so they can enjoy the quality of life that we all have. Thank you.
Anybody that has a 3x5 car, raise your hand.
Well, one thing that I'll do is consolidate where it might be possible. And then we'll do the final statements. Some of the questions are directed to specific people, and then there is a collection here that is not. So I'll start with the ones that are directed to specific people, and wherever possible, I'll consolidate. All right, first question is for Lee Davis. Lee, you were part of the leadership of our town for the prior 6 years when we knew the hall tax was going away. What did you propose during those years?
The mayor is responsible for setting the agenda of the town. The mayor did not have a plan for the demise of the hall income tax, and neither did I. I freely admit that I did not come up with a plan for the hall income tax, and that's a problem. And what we need to do is we need to have a plan. It's upon us. But I think the fundamental difference between Bill and myself, I'm not criticizing Bill because he does not have a plan by itself. I'm criticizing the fact that we're here, we had 6 years, and the answer is trust John Anderson to build you a village center, and that'll be the answer. That is not a plan. We still don't have a plan. Today, as we are approaching this election, the town of Walden has no plan to deal with the hall income tax. My plan is we need to have a serious conversation and talk about what investment we're prepared to make as a town on the hall income tax. And we need to have everybody, from the elected officials to the people who come to these meetings, discuss that. But the leadership, make no mistake about it, starts at the top. The mayor sets the agenda, and that's where the plan needs to come from.
All right, the next question goes to you. Actually, several questions for you, Colin. They have to do with the development of property on East Brow and Hampton. And the question, there's several questions here about that. What sort of septic wastewater system is planned for that? Generally, what is your role in that? And is the master plan that you mentioned the same as the land use plan that is now under study?
That's 6 minutes. 2 minutes for 3 questions. So I'll address this very briefly. There was a developer named Guy Shawana that came about that piece of land between Hampton Road and East Brow Road, and took it upon himself to go out and start tearing down trees and moving dirt and developing a neighborhood without ever taking the first step towards getting a permit. This was completely unbeknownst to me, completely before I became involved with it at all. So then he was approached by the town of Walden and Mayor Trohannis, and they put a heavy foot down on him and said, you guys need to go hire an engineer to get this fixed. Well, whether luckily or unluckily, he chose my firm to hire to try to help fix it. I think part of the reason why he chose us is because we're known at being the best in the business, and we fix problems like this all the time. So he hired us to come help get his permit, help get him on track to achieve the proper permit, and with that also came a bevy of untruths on his part in terms of how far he had gotten in development. So when we were hired, we were told he already had a septic permit, we were told he already had his RPA plat, and we were told he had already received all the permits from the town of Walden, and that all he needed was a land disturbance permit and a permit from Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation. So that's what we helped him do. By October, we realized things were going south with this developer. We continued performing our inspections on site to keep him within the rules, and then by December, we actually severed ties with this developer and no longer working with him, and by and large, we're unpaid for the services we were provided to begin with. So that is not an amicable relationship with that developer. I'm sure, as Lee Davis can attest, sometimes we take clients that we wished we didn't, and I certainly think that that's the situation for me. I will say going forward, and I will take a couple extra minutes because it was 3 questions. I will say going forward that part of my experience gives me insight to some of the loopholes in the current development standards for the town of Walden, and actually helps me be able to point out some of the weaknesses that may be there. And one of the things I'm going to do as Walden is try to update the developmental codes to make them more applicable to what we're trying to achieve as a town, and to try to protect us from those very things. And again, I will say, what Guy Shawarnik has done, while I'm not proud of it, is he is within the laws, following the rules by and large. As of late, he has broken the rules. He has violated some of his requirements for environmental conservation. Again, that has nothing to do with us. But I also do have a plan moving forward to try to sever ties with that developer, hopefully get that land back and do something better with it. More to come on that.
Thank you. All right. Kristen, to you. The only way the Food City development at Lyons Orchids could be approved as a village center was to waive every one of the zoning requirements for a village center. Do you approve of that approach to zoning and development?
I believe that we should stick to our current zoning standards as they are, and that we would rely on the experts that do the land survey for us and of the Regional Planning Commission, and that we would meet our current standards and what meets the needs of our residents and fits with the character of the town.
There are a number here for Mayor Trohannis. A couple of them have already been answered. There are several here that have to do with the infrastructure to accommodate the grocery store, the Food City development, and a couple here that have to do also with the regulations for this development. Would you speak about what has been done in preparation for the infrastructure and what the regulations are, the 23 regulations for the proposed development at that site?
I'm not sure what they're referring to as far as infrastructure, but from a transportation standpoint, it is a state highway and it's built for trucks that currently service all of the different amenities that we have up here, such as the MAPCO, Pruitt's, etc. So I don't, no other infrastructure has started yet. regarding the Food City. And the 23 conditions are posted on our website. If you would like to read them, unless you wanted me to go through each of them, which I don't think that's the case. But we do have 23 conditions that are on the development that are much more strict than what was in the village center. Does that answer your question, or I'm not? Hopefully. Okay. Thank you. Could I respond to another question, or no? Is that not appropriate this time?
Lizzie, this question is not directed at you, but I'm going to make it so. So, what is your position on term limit?
I've never actually thought about term limits in relation to the town of Walden. I know that we've had some mayors who have served for very long periods of time, and I think that has worked well. I guess I'm not really in favor of term limits for our town government. Thank you.
These questions are not directed at anybody in particular, so I'm going to read them, and then whoever wants to respond, please do. What will be done about speeding on the roads, specifically on Ivory Road towards Falling Waters Park? These streets need to be safe for our children. Who'd like to answer that? First.
I live on Ivory, and I see the speeders go past my house every single day. I have seen walkers almost be hit by cars. In fact, there was a child just a few weeks ago that was riding their bike on Ivory, and a lady was stopping to let the child cross lanes to go towards her house, towards the other end of Ivory, and a car was flying up Chestnut Avenue and had to lock them down to the point that the child almost fell off their bike because it terrified them so much. And it's scary when you walk your pets, or even if you bike or ride or walk, that you take your life in your own hands when you walk out on the streets. And I think that we should have better coverage from the sheriff's office in terms of reducing the speeding, and we may also need to look at possibly placing a stop sign at the top of Chestnut in order to try and slow people down, because they do tend to want to gain speed as they go up Chestnut, then they hit the straightaway on Ivory, and you can just, they're going way more than 30. I've seen them even go 50 or 60 on that straightaway, and it is dangerous, and something does need to be done. Thank you.
There's no question that that is an issue in our town, and Mr. Davis can attest to this as well. We had a contract for additional coverage with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. And when we did, we had random folks as policemen versus, as many of you will remember, when we had one dedicated policeman. His name was Officer Bates, correct. And that is what we wanted, and we signed up for in our contract. However, we were getting, and this, I want to say it was 2016, Lee, or close to that. And I simply asked the question at a town meeting, how many people can tell me the name of one policeman? Just one, because we had this random, and nobody could, but everyone knew Officer Bates. And the county, the sheriff's department couldn't commit to us to have one single person. And in the future, I think, and Lee and I have discussed this, with the connection with Hamilton County, if we could find a retired policeman who has the benefits and insurance and everything, who for lack of better terms, would be our point person. And in my view, he needs to be responsible and slow people down and understand and know everyone in Walden. I want him to be able to know that Jean Smith lives here and her dog's name is Spot, and have that connection that we had with Officer Bates. And that's one of my goals, and I just think it's an important one. We just have to figure out how to get that person in.
So again, this just comes from my side of the ledger of what I do for a living. One of the things we run into with speeding problems, a lot of people think it's an enforcement problem, but a lot of times when you have speeding problems on roads, it's a design problem with the road. So I've actually done speed studies for municipalities before, and the way we set speed limits on roads is we set out a speed detecting device, we track the speeds for a certain amount of time, and then after we've tracked those speeds for a certain amount of time, we run a diagram of where the speeds are that come in. The speed limit for a road is set at the 85th percentile of where people are driving on that road. So I would propose, again, with my background, that perhaps we should do a speed study on Ivory Road. We should see where the percentile is on the average speed that people are driving. If that 85th percentile is 40 miles an hour, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour, then we need to not be worrying about enforcing. We need to ask bigger questions about how do we redesign this road to make it more comfortable for drivers to drive slower and more comfortable for pedestrians to walk. Again, that's what I talk about when I say a safe, comfortable pedestrian environment. And some of those things that we can do are reducing lane widths. We can add sidewalks to the side, curb and gutter, even something as effective as landscaping along the side of the road. We can change the design environment for the driver, make it less comfortable for them to speed, and then we can actually make it safer for everybody, pedestrians and vehicles.
Speeding in Walden is a law enforcement issue. We all know that. All of us who've had children that have become 16 years of age, what do we tell them when they go into Signal Mountain, right? Don't speed, right? How many of you speed when you're in Signal Mountain? How many of you are aware whether you're speeding or not? When people come up here from other parts of the community as far away as Knoxville, they know don't speed in Signal Mountain. Our roads, East Brow Road, if you enjoy walking on East Brow Road, it is a very different experience today than it was 5 years ago. It is dramatically different than it was 10 years ago. Same thing on Forest Park, same thing on Ivory, same thing on Wilson. And these are directly related to the infrastructure issues of Walden and the surrounding community. When you build residential further out, when you have a commercial, let's say this grocery store gets built and there are thousands of cars coming in and out of that grocery store. Where are people going to go in their cars when they're trying to get to the W Road? Right? They're going to go down Wilson. They're going to go down Ivory. They're going to go down. They're going to treat it as a speedway. And if we can design, that would be great. To have an engineer design to slow it down. The reality is, we've all experienced it. It is very different today than it was a few years ago. This is what I'm talking about, the unintended consequences of unplanned growth. We need to have planned growth, cohesive growth, and whether you can walk on your road or not affects your property value, right? When people come up here and they say, well, I think I'd like to live here, and they think about their children out on the road, they're going to wonder if it's safe. So this is it's a visible and very, very clear area where we can identify it. And I think Bill and I are in agreement on that there is a way through enforcement that we can slow people down. But it's got to be active enforcement. There has to be a penalty to it. And we've got to be serious about it as a town. And it is corrosive. If we don't deal with it, it's going to get worse. And it has to be part of our plan.
This question I'd like to open up to anybody who would like to answer it. It's a little different from the previous ones. Would you consider metro government for Walden, Signal Mountain, and Hamilton County on the mountain, or now or in the future?
Max Bonner was one of the people who set up the town of Walden. And when you talk to him, he'll tell you that 45 years ago, we like to tell the story ourselves in Walden, that we set up Walden because we wanted to get away from Signal Mountain. But the actual truth is, we went to Signal Mountain first and asked for help from Signal Mountain because we wanted their police services. In the mid-'70s, there were a number of home robberies, home break-ins around the Walden area. It's when Signal Mountain would not cooperate with the policing, according to Mr. Bonner, and I'm not going to challenge him on the facts of the mid-'70s. It's when Signal Mountain would not do that a group of people got together, some of whom are here tonight, and formed Walden 45 years ago. And when they did that, they set up the parameters of what made sense for this town. And those things include the zoning ordinances that we have, and they have the quality of life, and the roads we were just talking about. But those things make Walden different than Signal. Not that we're opposed to Signal or the unincorporated part of the county, but you all moved up here, and so, except for Mickey and Joe, who were born up here. Everybody else, most of us moved up here at some point and chose to be here. And you know the reasons why you chose to be here. That's why we don't need to have a metro form of government. We need to keep Walden Walden, have a good working relationship and cooperation with Signal Mountain and the county, and we need to have planning for the whole plateau for things that we have in common, like the woolly adelgid threat that we dealt with here at the McCoy property. We need to deal with those things across the plateau that we have in common, but retain local government for Walden for the benefit of us, all of us.
Does anybody else want to address that? Okay, we'll go on to talk about septic systems then. There are several questions having to do with septic systems, how they don't function with the soil depth, and people would like to know how you all are going to address sewage issues at Lyons Orchids. Who would like to take that one?
Yeah, I think we've gone about this whole Lyons Orchids property backwards. I remember when I first moved into Topside and was renovating it, Sam Chester said the first thing you do is you take care of your SHI and you can fill in the last letter. And he was dealing with the septic tank. You had to deal with the septic tank before you dealt with the renovation of the log cabin. The same thing's true with Lyons Orchid. We're talking about that when that project happens, if you look at the design, the first thing that's going to happen is 10 feet of topsoil coming off the top of the project. 10 feet, basketball goal, coming off the top of the project. There are coal mine shafts underneath it. There is a creek that runs through it. Now, I'm told that there can be a plan on paper where you can put a septic system for Lyons Orchid. There is no grocery store that I am aware of in Hamilton County on a septic tank. Zero. And that's for a reason. They don't work. Now I'm told, well, we won't permit it because the county does that, and that's not the town. All you have to do is go through Hiddenbrook after a 2-day rain, and every single one of those systems passed by the county and passed with paper, right? I'm sure Lyons Orchid will get a piece of paper that says, this is a great septic system. My concern is, what is going to happen down the road? We have the ability to deal with that on the front end, not as one of the 23 conditions. Make the people come to us first and show that it can work. And the reason they don't is because it can't work, right? We all know that. You're not going to put a building the size of a football field, 2 other buildings that are 5,000 square feet, and a gas and diesel station and put it on a septic tank. Everybody with any common sense understands that. That is not going to work. And that is the greatest environmental threat we have to our town, respectfully, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Davis requested a layout of the septic system for the Lyons Orchid property early on, and we in fact got that back from the executive director from Wastewater Management for Hamilton County. and the company's name is Terracon. Colin, I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not. But they actually, he had requested this prior to us approving the site plan. So it was putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, because in order to lay out a septic system, you have to know where everything is. And, but he did that and laid it out successfully and said, showed exactly how it would work. And we have that, and it was, as I said, done by the executive director, Mr. Harrison, from Wastewater Management. So, again, I'm not an expert. None of us are experts up here in wastewater management. It's our duty to leave it to the experts that know how to do that. Thanks.
Okay.
I would be remiss if I did not say that I am an expert that does that. So, excluding me from that group of people on this stage.
This question is related, I think, and that is, it says all requirements of the village center zone were waived. Which of the 23 conditions replace the requirements that were waived? And I think probably the mayor and the vice mayor know more about that maybe than the several others of you. Who would like to tackle that one?
So when the property was first submitted, when the Lions Orchid property was first submitted to the county, the RPA, the Regional Planning Authority, it was submitted as a commercial project because that's what it is. It's a strip mall. It was denied because it exceeds Walden's zoning ordinance. We have a zoning ordinance. You're allowed to build a commercial building up to 5,000 square feet where you can apply for a variance. Somebody figured out that if you call it a village center, then you don't have to be bound by the 5,000 square feet. So that's how we ended up with this thing, by calling it a village center. Well, we all know what village centers are. We've all been to village centers. It's a place where there's connectivity, you can walk on paths, there's green grass, there's a residential component. It has a village and a center, and it's green. What we have is a strip mall. It is a parking lot for 250 parking spots, and it has 3 large buildings around it. It is not a strip mall. I mean, it's not a village center. And one of the things that I get so frustrated with is words have meanings and there are definitions. And if you insist on calling a strip mall a village center to make yourself feel good or to make yourself feel like you're doing something for your community, you're not. It is a strip mall. We know what a village center is. And when we have a strip mall, the only way you can make it into a village center is by listing 23 things to it. So imagine if I told you, here, I have a deal for you, and here's how great the deal is, and I'm going to add 23 conditions to it. But there are 6 requirements for it to be a strip, or to be a village center, but I'm going to remove all 6 of those. So what we have is this, in my opinion, and I'm completely biased, is this ridiculous process where it's a commercial building, it's a grocery store, and we've stripped away the village center. We insist on calling it that so that we can get the promised sales tax revenue. We could build a village center there. A real village center could go there, and it would be an appropriate use. So my challenge is bring us a village center and propose it to the town. That would be a really appropriate use for that spot.
I'm going to finish this part, I think, with one directed question to you, Colin, and then one open to all the rest of you. Colin, there was some concern that people would like you to address the conflict of interest. If you became an alderman, could you assure everybody here that there would be no conflict of interest in any professional work that you might do for developments?
I can absolutely say without hesitation that, when I decided to run for alderman, I spoke with the other partners in my firm, and we made a decision that, Colin, if you're going to participate in politics in the town of Walden, that means Reagan Smith is not going to participate in business in the town of Walden. And that was something that we all decided as a company. They wanted to support me and my endeavor to become alderman up here, and so that was something we were willing to take on. And certainly, if by any happenstance I would end up in a conflict of interest situation, I would recuse myself. But I do not foresee that happening. We currently don't have any active work in Walden and aren't pursuing any.
So here's an open question for any and all of you. It appears there are limited opportunities for the fiscal viability of Walden absent commercial development and a business tax base. Absent this fiscal viability, the surrounding communities will close in on us. What are options and a reasonable plan for the future? Can't quite read what that other says, but anyway, the writer wants to know what would be a reasonable plan, realistic tax plan, financial resources for the county.
Earlier, I'm the mayor and I write the agenda, so the subject of tax was just brought up here, so I thought I'd address the earlier comment as well. We do have a plan for the hall tax, and I'm sure a lot of you are out there wondering why your taxes went up for the past 3 years if we didn't have a plan. So to sort of follow off that question, when we did the assessment, as I said, our tax rate went from 43 cents to 38 cents. The year after that, in lieu of the hall tax going away, we did a gradual increase in taxes of 2 cents the first year, 10 cents the second year, and just this year, we went up another dime. So we've gone from basically 40 to 60 cents in lieu of the loss of the hall tax. And as far as coming up with additional business tax, the only revenue stream that we can get in the town, we don't have wheel taxes, we don't have things like that, is commercial development or property taxes. So, but it has to be done responsibly. And I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but I'm hopeful.
I think one way or another we've covered most of the questions that were posed on the cards. I'd suggest that if your question was not addressed, that after we finish this last part now, that maybe you talk individually with some of the candidates here and get their read on that particular concern. So the last part of the forum is a wrap-up, and it's closing remarks that each one of the candidates will make for about 2 minutes. And since we stopped here, we'll start with Mayor Johannes and then just move down the line. Closing remarks.
Thank you all so much for coming out here this evening. And again, Mickey, thank you, and all the folks up here willing to serve, thank you as well. I'm just excited we did it safely and respectively, and considering what we've seen in the past. The ability to share the vision of our town is important. It's important for the people up here, and it's important for the people sitting in the audience. We're so fortunate to call this place Walden as our home. It's my honor to have served you the last 5 years as Walden's mayor. I've poured my heart and soul into this community, and I do it every day. We have an array of updated facilities, as we've mentioned all night long, including this place behind me, the pumpkin patch, the dog park, and there's one other, I'm a little lost here, excuse me. And you've seen those. It's our job, in my opinion, as a board to maintain those assets. And if you think about maintaining this place, McCoy property, it's an asset and it's increased in value, but it's done so because of the work of the boards. They've been remarkable in what they've been able to do. The pumpkin patch, it just went through a renovation. The regrow campaign was vital to that. And along with that, we've had the pavilion restrooms, we redid those. And I just think it's important to maintain our assets. As so many have shared with me, we're going in the right direction. I hope I can count on your vote and continue the journey as being mayor of Walden. Please check out my Facebook page or mayortrianis.com. Thank you so much this evening. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. Having spent my youth and adulthood thus far in Walden, I know many of the residents, and I believe that I will serve as a great representative for them. I love the natural beauty of our town, the quietness, and the small town charm. My priorities would be to make our streets safer for our children, bicyclists, walkers, and pets. Keep the small town charm by sticking to our principles and foundation, and be a good steward of the residents' taxes and look for innovative ways to maximize the impact of every dollar. Our community has been divided over recent issues, and I hope that we can all work together to mend those feelings and thoughts, to work towards building a brighter future for all residents, both two and four-legged. We are better together, and I would be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Guys, again, thank you so much for coming out and listening to us talk a little bit about all the things that are very important to our town. I do want to close by just saying, guys, as a candidate, I'm going to do everything I can to draw on both my personal and professional experience to help serve this town. One of the big things I believe that for our town to thrive, we need to have an updated, relevant, and representative master plan that lays out a vision for our town. I think that we need to hold builders, both public and private in our town, to a higher standard, hold it to a higher standard of both technical and aesthetic charm. As a husband and father, I know we didn't talk about this too much, but I have my wife Kirby, and 2 kids. I do hold dearly the security of our town. I'm recently the victim of a petty crime in our neighborhood. We had a rash of break-ins, and there are times at night when my wife still wakes up at night scared about that end result. And so I do hold dear the security of our town, and I think we need to think proactively and strategically about keeping our town safe to that end. As a Walden resident and taxpayer, guys, it's very important to me that we maintain fiscal solvency in our town. And I think as aldermen, we need to plan. I think we've all pointed to a situation right now where we didn't plan enough to maintain fiscal solvency, and that's part of what I hope to do. And as a community, as being involved in the community, I'm a leader at a local church. I'm the lay leader at Signal Crest United Methodist. I also coach a youth soccer team. I hold dear our public spaces, the parks, all the different assets of our community. It's so important to making sure that the backbone of our community is Walden. And so I really want to bring forth a plan to connect all of that stuff and help keep our town connected. And then last but not least, as an alderman, I'm going to work hard to fight for Walden, put Walden first. Sometimes that may mean butting heads with folks at Signal Mountain. Sometimes that may mean butting heads with the county if we're not getting what we want. But at the end of the day, it's our job to lead Walden, and I look forward to doing that and ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
We heard a lot tonight about different candidates and their visions for the future of Walden. I believe that my education and experience make me the best candidate for alderman. I'm an attorney who's practiced in the Hamilton County court system for the past 7 years, so I understand Hamilton County and I understand the law. Right now, I'm an unemployment hearing officer for the state of Tennessee, and at my job every day, I have to listen really carefully to two very opposite sides of an issue. Then after the hearing is over, I use the facts and the law to make the very best decision I can for everybody that's involved. I think that listening is an invaluable skill for an alderman, and I really would like to encourage the residents of Walden to engage with the town hall so that we can come up with a plan for the future that encompasses all of us. I have the skills to hear what our citizens say and to make the very best decisions possible for our town. So I would really appreciate your vote on November the 3rd, and I appreciate you listening to me tonight. Thank you very much.
You know, at its core, or at my core, I'm an optimist, and my wife would tell you I'm a naively optimistic person sometimes, and I tend to see the good in people and the good in situations, and I see almost all good in Walden. We are financially solid right now. We have a wonderful place to live. We all made decisions of why we want to live in this town. And I think if we remember those things first, about like what is it about in your life or your family that brought you to Walden, and if we keep those things paramount in front of us, I think that'll guide us as we go forward as a town. I think cooperation is very important. I pledge that if I'm mayor of Walden, that any important decision that's divisive, we only have 3 people in this council, 2 aldermen and a mayor, that we'll keep talking on something that is this divisive until we can reach an agreement. You know, we should be able to do that. Right? We have people, we are in the place we are today. People of good intentions have different ideas. That's where we are. Everybody who's involved in the town government is a good person. We just have different visions of where we're going to go. I believe ultimately we have a fantastic town. We talk about the interconnectivity of McCoy. I mean, just look around us right here. It doesn't take much imagination to figure out how we can make this better within the pumpkin patch. How we could get down past Daly's house and get out to East Brown Road and actually have a safe place to walk. You know, we can solve these problems together. We can have a land use plan where we really do come together and meet and discuss and prioritize what we want. We can accomplish all of those things. And we can do it together if we listen, cooperate, but preserve fundamentally what makes Walden Walden and why we're a little bit different than the places around us. But we need to live together and in cooperation. Thank you. October 14th, early voting. I would appreciate your vote.
Let's give all our candidates a big hand.
So now you have heard the 3 candidates for alderman, the 2 for mayor. Each one of them has indicated to you what positive difference they want to make in the town of Walden and its future. So now, if you have any questions after we conclude this meeting, you may want to talk with the candidates individually. But unless you have further remarks, Mickey, I think we're all set.